Alright, good afternoon guys, how you guys doing today? My name is Roman Benavides, and the main topic that I'll be discussing with you guys today is the death penalty. So a little background information about the death penalty. Basically what it is your capital punishment. And some crimes that qualify for the death penalty include, but are not limited to, first-degree murder, genocide, the deliberate killing of a large group of people, murder related to rape or child molestation, bank robbery related murder or kidnapping, murder involving torture, treason, and much more. So as you can see, a lot of it has to do with murder and stuff like that. And the thing about the death penalty is that it's been widely argued about whether it's necessary for someone to decide whether or not someone should be put on death row, and whether it's a cruel or unusual punishment, which relates to our 8th Amendment, which does not allow any cruel or unusual punishment. And with that being said, the prop that I will be defending today is that the death penalty has a positive effect on criminal justice. And to defend my claim, my secondary supporting claims are: 1, the death penalty ends any further crime from the criminal; 2, the death penalty gives closure to the victim's families or anyone related to the victim; and 3, being punishment should fit the crime. So to get into better depth into my first claim, which is the death penalty ends any further crime from the criminal. So what does that mean? It's pretty self-explanatory, but it's definitely, there's more to it. So obviously once that criminal is put down after being put on death row, there's no chance of escape attempts, being able to escape the prison and commit more crimes and to harm more people as they have already done. As we do know, prison escapes are rare, but knowing the fact that it is rare doesn't mean that it is impossible, and we don't want to take that small chance of them being able to escape and causing more crime. And it is possible for those criminals to have that time and patience to come up with an escape plan. An example of this was back in 2016. Three criminals escaped from the men's central jail in Orange County on January 22nd in 2016. I have a quote from Lieutenant Jeffrey Halleck, which is one of the lieutenants that was working at the prison. He said, "To escape, they had to cut through at least 4 layers of metal, steel, and rebar in the dormitory, go through unsecured plumbing tunnels, and make their way to the roof, where they may use a makeshift rope of knotted bed sheets and cloth to rappel to freedom." So what can we take from this? It definitely took a lot of time and planning, and for a maximum security unit. Knowing that they were able to escape from a maximum security unit definitely worries us, because we don't really want to take that chance for them. And from the time they were able to escape, they were able to commit more crimes as they were free to do so, as soon as they were able to make it to their freedom. Not only did they escape, the police also had a very tiring manhunt for about 8 days. And so not only did the police had a very stressful time searching for these criminals, but they also, people in that area had to worry about their lives and stress about their safety with people that were free from the prison and were able to commit more crimes. Going on to my second claim, the death penalty gives closure to the victim's families or anyone related to the victim. So, which means death on the criminal will bring the person related to the victim closure, knowing that the criminal has been put down. An example of this was Kermit Alexander. He's a former NFL star. His family was murdered by a gang member back in 1984. The gang member was put on death row. However, 3 decades later, the criminal was still alive. So, he said that "it gallows me. The people of California have said over and over again that they want this kind of punishment for the worst criminals." So, obviously, it upset him that this person was not put down yet after 30 years. And so he put matters into his own hands and sued the criminal justice system in California, and eventually won the case, and eventually that person was put down and he was able to move on afterwards. Moving on to my last secondary claim, punishment should fit the crime. We can all agree that a lot of these criminals should receive the same amount of punishment they deserve. What I mean by this is that I don't mean that the person, the criminal, that when they've done the crime, that their punishment should match the same action that they have done. I mean, say if someone were to sexually abuse another person, they shouldn't be sexually abused back. What I mean to say that instead of a small punishment and releasing the criminal out where they can cause more harm and more crimes, a greater punishment would prevent loss of many other innocent lives, and an example would also be made for any potential criminals. To put it in better words, I have a journalist quote from the Daily Titan, Brian Chester: "Convicted killers, once released from their short sentence, are free to slay the minute they walk out of the penitentiary. When someone brutally murders another person, it makes sense that the punishment for the perpetrator should also be death. So as you can see, the punishment should fit the crime, as it would be more just for the criminal justice system. And in conclusion, to sum up everything, for these reasons, I believe that the death penalty has a positive effect on criminal justice. And hopefully I've said enough to convince all you guys to. Thank you.
All right, well, there's several things that I think are really solid here. Organizationally, you're in good shape. The proposition's clear. There's a preview. When you get to the main body of the speech, the secondary claims are nicely labeled. You have good transitions between those points. So following everything that you're talking about is not a problem. Some of the problems that do exist, though, I don't think that there's much development of any proof on that first point. It's mostly an explanation of what your assumption is. You've got hypotheticals. You've got one example of escaped prisoners who then had to be recaptured, and there was a long manhunt for them. We don't know what other crimes might have been committed while they were released, and that's a potential problem. If there were slayings in that process, then that would support your argument a little bit more. But that, of course, is primarily for escaped prisoners. I think you're also missing potential problems that people who are incarcerated might contain, and continue, and there's no additional punishment for them if there is no death penalty. I think there's probably an argument to be said that there's some potential problem there that you're missing. That's an opportunity. That's low-hanging fruit, as they say, something that shouldn't be that hard to find. But since you acknowledge that escape is relatively infrequent, then it seems like it's the least important of your arguments that you're developing. So the other ones need to be more substantial. The second point talks about closure to the family. Basically, you have a single example here. It's a good example, the Kermit Alexander case. How Alexander sued to get his family's killer executed was not quite clear, and there needs to be some source citation on this. The case itself, I think, illustrates the point that there is a need for families to feel some sense that it is done and that justice has been prevailed upon us. But like I said, this is an isolated case. It's a singular example, and I think that it would be easy for the response speaker to say there are plenty of people who don't think that executing somebody would be just, and if they were in that situation, or even people who are in that situation feeling like this is not necessary. So we're countering one person's experience with another's. Why is your experience more generalizable? I think we need some information on that. The third point is problematic for a couple reasons. First of all, it sounds like a value argument because you're talking about what is proportional and what is just in this situation. The better argument, I think, on this point that you mention is that it would potentially deter crime, but there's no development of that particular point. There's no evidence that shows that that's the case. It's kind of an assumption that's going on there. So the third point is really a value argument, which is nicely phrased and explained, but not really relevant to the assignment that we're talking about or the claim that you're presenting. So that's a little bit of a problem. I think you do a very nice job speaking to the audience also and explaining your position. Thank you.